What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some Destiny 2 discussion and a couple of news roundups in the video as well. So we're going to touch on a potential secret event possibly happening in the next couple of weeks as we get close to the end of Season 11. But then we also have some mild teasers for Beyond Light and Year 4 story, clarification about launch times, the raid, and the reset schedule changes coming soon. But let's also touch on some of the mysteries linked to Year 4 now, including DLC activities on Europa, NPCs, and more. Then we have additional roundups, a secret event area, and a couple of other things to mention in the video. So I hope you guys enjoy this one, but now let's get into it. So the first thing to touch on today, something we have spoken about a little bit before, but in terms of secrets and the remainder of Season of Arrivals itself, players are now starting to talk about Calamity Protocol. And so a spoiler alert is necessary right here, but the Calamity Protocol emblem appears in the database for the game, and it does have a source listed for the end of season event. And that is in relation to Season 11 itself, but for this season, we have had the story delivery via the Cradle on Io, and our recent visit did give us an invite to Europa, where ancient power awaits, but additionally, we've evacuated a significant portion of the 4 destinations being invaded, so everything is pretty much ready for the next phase. However, at the moment, the emblem is all that we have to go by, and this has remained a secret throughout the course of the season, so whether it's an event that we can kind of go and visit different destinations and maybe take part in, or whether it's a more kind of cinematic experience, which does seem more likely, this is something we're going to have to simply wait and see for. But regardless, less than a month is remaining, and we have 3 resets, so if something's going to happen, it's on its way pretty soon. I'm kind of curious based on the name of the emblem, but also the visuals, as to whether it could have something to do with Rasputin. Of course, Rasputin is now saved in the form of a basic Warmind frame, with Anna somewhere in the tower, but with Protocol also being a term we'd often associate with Rasputin, maybe it could be linked with his remaining weapons on Mars, or alternatively, a move by the pyramids. There's quite a lot of scope for what could happen, so let us know what you guys think down below, and I'm sure we'll see exactly how it will play out soon. In terms of story into Beyond Light though, Lance Reddick, who voice acts for Zavala in Destiny 2, did tease that he's still recording voice work for the game, and he said this next iteration of Destiny is going to be off the chain. And that was in reference to the next release for the game, coming any day, which of course means to say the next actual piece of content that the game gets, so it's definitely pretty exciting that the voice actors themselves are getting hyped for the next expansion. Now just the other day, Bungie confirmed that the raid for Beyond Light will be launching on Saturday 21st of November at 10 AM PST, but Cosmo clarified that resets in the game will be at 9 AM by then. However, the raid still launches at 10 AM Pacific despite the change in times, so that'll still be 1800 UTC, which is 6 PM on the 21st of November, and that's a time and date specific to the raid. But otherwise, in terms of the Destiny schedule in general, daylight saving does mean that we'll be seeing 9 AM PST resets in the USA and 5 PM resets in the UK for the winter, and that starts in late October and early November, so bear that in mind, as it will also affect the raid release time. But DMG said they'll be sure to sound off when this will impact the game. Naturally, in the coming weeks, we're pretty likely to see new release trailers for Beyond Light, possibly something like a Vidoc, as teased by someone at Bungie the other day. And at this point, one of the things we could probably expect would be a further reveal of any kind of game modes, activity content on Europa, and seasonal content with hints about more of the activity stuff we'll actually be doing in the game, right? Because as always, we've had quite a lot of information about Beyond Light, and while we don't know a lot about the modes themselves, we have had a peek of various activity things in trailers. So we've got these huge scalable platforms, a shot where we see a Guardian, possibly on some sort of loot chest there. But we also see fire teams of 3 platforming across Vex architecture, as well as pyramid-style architecture, and other shots show very large pyramid-style structures on the actual surface of Europa. And then we see Guardians on top of structures fighting alongside what appear to be friendly AI, but with some mechanics similar to the Garden of Salvation, at least in respect of the Vex technology, which seems to be dotted throughout various activities, but other areas show fire teams of 3 fighting Fallen, including a new boss, and spaces which are visually identical to that of the pyramid that we explored in Shadowkeep. And so I think some of what we're seeing with some of the Vex tech could be a kind of world activity for Europa, but we're also likely seeing some content from the Strike on Europa, possibly that Fallen boss, and also some story combat is likely to have been shown in there as well. But in terms of new content, I think the activity stuff specifically is one of the next big questions that we have for Beyond Light, and it's likely they will at least tease some of that stuff before it launches in any upcoming reveals. Another really big curiosity that we hold right now is the question of how the Cosmodrome will play into Year 4, but also the characters associated with it, because, as Bungie announced a few days ago, a new character named Shorhan will serve as a guide to the introduction of Destiny 2 in new light. And naturally, players asked the question, could this be Prince Aldrin kind of reborn? And it feels like an idea that's maybe easy to dismiss, but some kind of link to Aldrin, or a piece of his armor, certainly exists in connection to the Cosmodrome. So the new Triumph tab for the destination does share the icon most prominent on the original Prince Aldrin armor. And we should note as well that this hasn't been used elsewhere in the Destiny universe. Also, Aldrin was reborn as a Guardian a couple of years ago now, and more recently, around a year ago, reports via the Dawning did suggest that he was present on Earth. But as a Guardian, he would presumably take a new name, so looking to Shorhan, we have a Wild Hunter, as it were, which is also the class that Aldrin is believed to be, in the Cosmodrome, and of course wearing younger Hamkara's spine, where there is a definite link to Aldrin's past in the Awoken. It does seem entirely possible that this character could be Prince Aldrin reborn, and it's also quite common for location vendors like in Vanilla D2, with Devrim K for example, to be kind of key NPC figures on a destination also featured in the story. So this could be the beginning of bringing Aldrin back, but nonetheless, also without a Hunter Vanguard if you think about it. Of course, Shorhan is training new Guardians, which would kind of mean he's been doing at least a bit of that Vanguard role. Definitely something to think about, but if Shorhan turns out not to be the resurrected Prince Aldrin, things definitely remain interesting because that icon associated with Aldrin is still the marker for the Cosmodrome triumphs in Year 4, and so the destination will likely either have one interesting new character or quite possibly two. And so be sure to give us your thoughts down below, guys. Again, it feels like a bit of a stretch to say it, but a lot of evidence would actually support it as well, so give us your thoughts in the comment section. Now though, a few updates associated with Beyond Light and Year 4. Looking back to a few weeks ago, Bungie did say that they've actually relit portions of the European Dead Zone and Nessus, essentially to improve their visual quality moving forward and bring them up to a similar level as some of the other destinations that are in the game now. And DMG has said that it'll see if they can get some before and after shots of what the destinations will look like soon. Also, DMG confirmed that the new Hunter exotic Athris Embrace is indeed called that and not Arthur's Embrace. There was actually a misspelling, I believe, on the Bungie website for the exotic, but Athris' Embrace is the actual name. And finally, since some players were wondering about the next-gen upgrades for Destiny 2, Mark Noseworthy did confirm that they will see true 4K, so that means native 4K, and not kind of an upscaled version of the game, as well as 60 FPS, and the addition of the field of view slider for the game, which is a pretty big one for consoles. So just a good thing to clarify right there. And otherwise, as we discussed a few weeks back, Mark Noseworthy and Luke Smith did talk to Edge regarding Beyond Light, and given that Bungie have recently spoken about the fact that raid gear and raid armor will receive a dedicated raid mod slot in Year 4, we also had that discussion that Vault of Glass is going to be a key part of the Year 4 story, and Luke Smith had said that it'll be fully woven into the narrative space for Year 4, and not kind of just a raid that appears randomly at some point in the roadmap. They'd also said that they're trying to get a little bit back to the feeling of Destiny 1 in terms of customization, and of course having more options with things like status, collectible options, and more varied upgrades for those subclass trees is a pretty big deal as well. And they also pointed out that despite the fact they're removing a lot of older content in Destiny 2, he said the most important thing to them is how the game feels in November, and the ecosystem of content and experience, and whether players have enough to do. He suggests that they're certainly much more concerned about that than purely the amount of real estate in the game, right? And that absolutely makes sense. But like we were talking about with activities in Year 4, things that we don't know a lot about just yet, I think the things we're next most concerned about are related to the content, the quality, and replayability of stuff that we'll see in Year 4. But once again, give us any thoughts or things you're excited for when it comes to Beyond Light down in the comments section below. Final thing I wanted to mention right here, but a Game Rant article that was pretty interesting did cover a video initially shared by Froggy on Reddit. But off in the distance, inside of the Haunted Forest, there is an area kind of hidden away right here, and players are referring to it as a bit of an assault course, but there are actually staircases on the left and right hand side of this huge kind of platform floating in the sky. We can see that it's lit up in a pretty interesting way, and there are kind of moving objects that can knock you off the side, very similar to what you'd see in something like the Whisper mission. No legitimate way into this space has ever actually been found, and so it is pretty interesting. At the moment, players can only really get there during a Haunted Forest run, and it requires some sword flying and things like that. But could it be linked to something like the Ascendant Lens? I guess it's somewhat possible, or it could be for getting a ridiculous number of waves completed in the Haunted Forest perhaps. But otherwise, some players speculate that it's simply a misused section that isn't going to have a specific purpose, at least inside of this event. But regardless, I thought it was something pretty interesting to share with you guys, and I'll link the video from Froggy, as well as another video from JB3 down below, where you can see some of the exploration in that space. But for today, guys, that's what we have to speak about in the video. If you have enjoyed this one, a rating down below very much helps us out. But also, if you're new to the channel, be sure to get subscribed, and I'll keep you posted with the world of Destiny 2, all the news, guides, and that good stuff. of course, as we lead up to Beyond Light, and naturally, once that content actually drops. But otherwise, guys, I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you have an awesome day.